sound good, but is not easy. How or why should we willingly do something that costs us when the world is full of enough pain? Why should we be decent to idiots, kind to narcissists, or tolerate, even forgive those who hurt us? The answer is that grace isn't a form of capitulation or complacency, isn't about weakness or politeness. It requires grit and strength, and somehow can change everything. This is what I became determined to understand. My quest has become even more urgent given that we live in an era when grace is an increasingly rare currency. The silos in which we consume information dot the media landscape like skyscrapers, and the growing distrust of the press, politicians, and public figures has in some ways choked our ability to cut each other slack, to allow each other to stumble, to forgive one another. The rows of guillotines on Twitter attest to the fact that apologies or remorse are very rarely viewed with anything but cynicism. Think too of these trends. We're getting lonelier, angrier, and less tolerant. Trust in institutions and each other has corroded. We report having fewer close friends. We're also becoming less empathetic. One study, analysing data from 1979 to 2009, found that the empathy of American students had dropped by almost 50%, with the decline accelerating over time. Over the same period, narcissism has apparently increased. The statements the students responded to included, "I often have tender, concerned feelings for people less fortunate than me," and "I try to look at everybody's side of a disagreement before I make a decision." Asked to find reasons for this dramatic decline in empathy, the leader of the research, Sarah H. Conrath of the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, points to growing social isolation. In many Western countries, the number of people living alone has doubled in recent years, and we're less inclined to join communities such as churches, scouts, unions, and political parties. Social fabric is fraying like patches decaying on quilts. We're also, incidentally, reading far less, something that has been shown to impact empathy. It seems obvious to say, but research tells us that those who report being more empathetic do actually respond more to the needs and concerns of others. Lonely people are more likely to cheat, think worse of others, and suffer from a range of physical and mental health issues. Even moderate loneliness can make us sick. And curiously, the lonelier we are, the less wise we are. Researchers compared loneliness in two starkly different populations, one in Salento in rural southern Italy and one in San Diego in the United States. In both groups, they found that the more wisdom an individual had, the less lonely they felt. The study defined wisdom as having several components, all of which stoke grace, including empathy, compassion, self-reflection, and emotional regulation or discipline, with the first two having the strongest inverse correlation with loneliness. Be kind to people, listen to people, try to understand their point of view, and you will be wiser and less lonely. Wisdom also meant people slept better and were healthier. The designer of the study, Dr. Unabridged, distinguished professor of psychiatry at the University of California, San Diego, says wisdom and loneliness do not seem to coexist. In other words, wiser people don't feel lonely and vice versa. Obviously, this doesn't prove that increasing wisdom will reduce loneliness, but it certainly points in that direction. It is logical to expect that wisdom will counter loneliness. This all makes sense, and researchers are now working on ways to increase people's compassion and, in turn, improve health. A 2021 study even showed how loneliness and wisdom, including compassion, relate to gut microbial diversity and composition.